Well, where are we at right now with this ordinance?
I think that's a great question. We had community members asking us last week too. I think what the council is doing is we created a subcommittee so that way in between meetings, council can continue to work on this process. So it's kind of wonky, but the Oregon ethic laws don't allow the entire council to meet all of the time, not in a public meeting. So we create these subcommittees so the work can continue. You see similar things on how Portland is addressing a lot of their issues is in smaller teams. So right now it's with the subcommittee as we're working through some of the legal aspects of what the ordinance can do, what it can't do. And it gives us time to go back and meet with impacted communities like our staff, communities that didn't have a chance to weigh in, because some of the changes to the ordinance were brought to us at noon the day that we voted on it, which didn't give the council really the amount of time to go back and talk to communities about how it might impact and what we might see come out of it.
My understanding is that Councilwoman Nadia Hassan may be part of this conversation, right? And during that meeting, she said it didn't go as far as she would have hoped to see it go. And one of those things, I mean, has to do with, Beaverton police stopping these agents as they violate laws. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, is that something, because I remember also Councilman Kevin Teeter said that it's something that they've already been doing. Can you provide some kind of clarity about that?
Well, I think sometimes rules and what we're doing, some of these things are already happening, right? Our police are already enforcing the law when they see it. And what we needed to do is give them an opportunity to weigh in. And so when we have an ordinance brought to us with 4 hours notice, it doesn't give the council the opportunity to go and talk with staff, to talk with the attorney, to have the city manager weigh in on some of those points. Councilor Hassan is the one that drafted it and brought us to us, so she had a lot longer to think about it, to work through some of the issues that the other councilors were asking questions about. And what we're trying to do is give the time for the council to catch up. Councilor Hassan said on the record that she'd been working on it for an entire year. And so the council needed the ability to see it play out and what that means. We needed our attorney to weigh in to what we're doing. But I think we all want to use every single tool in the toolbox to address this injustice that's happening on our streets. And I think at some opportunity is gonna put our police in that situation, which is why we needed to step back and understand the legal ramifications of what we were asking them to do. What we don't want is our police interacting with federal agents and helping them in any way. And the federal or the state law around sanctuary and the city's code do not allow them to participate. What I've heard from the police union is a bit of their concern around, if we start interacting, is the community going to assume that now we're aiding ICE? Because that's not what the police department wants. They want to follow the laws and the rules of the city, and they want clarity on how they're supposed to interact and do it. And so I do agree that putting our officers in that position could be harmful, which is why the community needs to understand what role we're asking them to do, and our police officers deserve to know what we're asking them to do in their day-to-day jobs.
Even if legally these officers are allowed to do that, is the union supportive of this?
The union is, that's a question for the police union. We haven't got.
What are they telling you?
Yeah, they haven't said whether they support it or not support it. What they're asking us is for clarity. And I think that's an important piece for them. But the way that we do public safety is our officers aren't wearing masks. They're identifying themselves. They are working hard to earn community trust to make sure that when you call 911, the response that comes is culturally responsive, they understand what the rules are, and our police are deeply rooted in community safety, and that's what they want to provide. And so some of these things that we're asking the federal government to do, which is not wear a mask, to identify yourself, to wear body-worn cameras, is something we've asked our officers to do for a long time in the city of Beaverton.
Some people may feel like the clock is ticking. It's like a ticking time bomb before the next incident happens. How quick are you able to put something together? And I mean, do we have a timeline here?
I understand the urgency, and I feel it too. But what we can't afford to do is get it wrong. That's going to set us back even further than where we are now. And the community wants us to use every tool in the toolbox. And that's what we're attempting to do with this ordinance. We're jumping out ahead of other cities. You know, the city of Beaverton weighed in on the state law around masking that Representative Chaichi is trying to put forward. We are implementing every tool in our toolbox. And I do think it takes every person has a role in democracy right now and saving it and preserving it. And our job as the city is the convener. We bring people into the conversations. We are joining lawsuits. It's something I said from the very beginning, that when we enter lawsuits and win, it keeps our community safer. National Guard troops are not on the streets of Portland because cities came together and sued the government and kept them out. And we saw that the Trump administration backed off the National Guard troops last week in their appeal. So we have to focus on what we can do. Everyone's role matters right now. What our special district park is doing, what our state legislature is doing, what our attorney general is doing, we feel it too. Our level of government was not designed to be put in this position where we are trying to regulate the federal government. It is supposed to work in opposite of that. You see that the Portland city councilors are struggling, and they are a bigger government with more resources, and they're having a hard time answering how do we operate in this moment, just like we are. But I think sometimes that governments are afraid to fail. They don't want to try things because it's going to go back the opposite direction. What our council is doing right now is looking at every opportunity to secure our community in every fit. No troops on our street. We want agents that are operating under the same criteria we ask our own police to operate on. We want our staff to feel safe, which is why we want them to have training. We want to work with ACLU and Park, which we do as a city quite often. And we want our community to feel like we care and know that we care. And we are doing those things. And we're having to run the city. We're having to make sure that our streets are maintained, that we are working in Salem as the legislative process unfolds. I want our community members to know we care. We hear about what's happening every single day, and it's personal for a lot of the council.
And really quick, what have you discovered in the last couple of weeks that they can't, what is being requested basically by, let's say, Hassan or the community, that can't be done and can be done?
I think it's the right tool sometimes. So when the community says, we want you to put it in an ordinance, we want it to be a code, that doesn't give us any flexibility. The Trump administration is blowing through laws and changing their tactics every day. When it's in a policy, which from the dais I said was an important step, it makes it flexible. You want me as the mayor to get out there and fight? I want to do that. It's in my nature, but I need the flexibility to do it. City codes are rigid, which is why it's not our preferred tool. A policy gets the same impact, but it gives us the flexibility to change. So some of this is about the right tool. We convened conversations with our other levels of government, the 911 call center, our special district park, our special district fire. We're asking them to join us in this urgency, declaring an emergency. How are we helping impacted communities? Aid organizations have sprung out. They're the ones that are feeding, they're answering the call. The school district is working with impacted students, but they're doing these things quietly. Because when the Trump administration hears about what cities and how we're responding, they change their tactic. And sometimes leadership means quiet, behind the scenes, picking up the phone and working. Sometimes it means being out in front. And what you've seen from the council is both. We're being bold, we're being out in front with some of these policies, but some of the work we're doing is more nuanced. It's working with the school district, working with the park, working with our federal delegation to make sure that we're meeting the moment.
A couple more questions. I want to know if officers respond, let's say someone sees a ICE activity happening, immigration enforcement effort happening. They call 911, they say, hey, this is happening. Does that mean that the police department is responding with lights and sirens? Or did you already find out that, hey, that can't happen?
I think it depends on what they're calling in for. If they're calling in and they're like, there's an emergency happening, our officer is going to respond. Our police chief has already told our officers, we will respond when we are called. When 911 dispatched us, we will show up. Part of the reason we wanted to have a sanctuary status in 2017, and part of the reason that I led that coalition was my work at Virginia Garcia when I worked there prior to the mayor. When you call 911, you should be comfortable the police are going to come. And that is why protecting our community this way is really important. So they'll call when they will come when called. And they have a duty to intervene. It's already in the state constitution, in the state law. If they see something, a legal and immoral happening, police have a duty to intervene.
Okay, and depending on the federal government's,
Right.
Right. knowledge of that, they may
Right.
say it's not. But
We can't control what the federal government says and does. We can only control what we say and do. And there's a legal definition. We've talked to the DA. There's a legal definition for all of these things. And our officers are well trained in that. The DA has talked about it. And we'll prosecute. The DA will prosecute. The AG will prosecute when it hits that level. Part of what we're doing as a city by working with the 911 call system and what we've heard our congressional delegation say is, for us to be able to sue, we need to have these videos of bystanders. We need to make sure that the information is being reported to the AG's call center, because we have to have standing in lawsuits to be able to follow or to file them, and we only can create standing with evidence.
But some of these guys, like Councilman Kevin Teeter said, they have qualified immunity. Can you explain that?
Well, I am not a lawyer, and qualified immunity is a federal, there is an Oregon statute that already exists around qualified immunity, and that is a question for the DA, and that is a question for the AG.
Okay,
And they do, and the president, it doesn't help us when the president, from the most important bully pulpit in the country, tells them to go in hard and break the law, and they have qualified immunity, and what we're seeing is they're acting like it.
Anything else that you think it's important to mention?
I think it's important to mention that we are using every tool in the toolbox. We are analyzing every rule, and we understand the community has urgency, and we feel it too. And sometimes what we need is the community to focus their energy on the right level of government that has the tools, which is the federal government, our congressional delegation. We have a role to play, but so do they. But we're the level of government that is closest to the people, and so we hear it because we're easily accessible. And we are hearing them, we are responding. The mayors of our region meet weekly. We are moving it. There is a coalition call that happens every 2 weeks to understand how every level of government is dealing with this crisis unfolding on our streets. And I, as the mayor, just like many community members, think that there's not enough we can do, and it's something that every single day I think about because it matters.
Yeah, really quick, you said that we're hearing it. Is there any specific incident that you know of where federal agents acted in an illegal manner, whether it be, the parking lot incident, remember that? So anything that you know of?
There's nothing that, we have a lot of our community telling us about incidents that are happening, and I believe them because they're videotaped in a lot of cases. What we're hearing mostly from the community is the fear that they can't leave their home. What their primary breadwinner gets taken away, how are they going to pay their bills? What we're hearing is, young people afraid to take a bus to school, and so we're hearing our community telling us the pain. Mutual aid is coming out of this need. We're seeing organizations step up, and they're partnering with government, and sometimes they're acting alone because they can move faster and quicker to reach some of these people. And what I learned from my years of working at Virginia Garcia is that it takes every level of government to accomplish this, and it takes every community member seeing themselves as part of the solution. And that's what we are attempting to bring our community together to address this crisis.
Okay,